Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the book of Second Samuel. Today we're going to be picking up right in, well, really in the same narrative of First Samuel, where we saw King Saul die at the end of that book. And today we are going to pick it up starting in chapter 1, where David hears the news of King Saul, and we're going to hear how David reacts. We're going to see how David reacts to the news that both King Saul and his dear friend Jonathan have been killed. So David receives news that King Saul and his son Jonathan have been killed in battle with the Philistines, and he's heartbroken. Remember, even though Saul had treated him as a rival and even tried to kill him, David had never wished any harm. He'd had chances to harm him, he had chances to take him out even, but he didn't want to do it because he didn't want to raise his hand against the Lord's anointed. And remember, Jonathan was probably his best friend. And so this is bad news for David. He is not happy about it. So when the messenger claims to have helped the stricken Saul to end his life, David actually has him killed on the spot because Saul was the Lord's anointed king. His life was sacred. So then David sings a lament, which has been famous ever since. He forbids the news of Saul's death to be published in case the Philistines celebrate. He curses the mountain of Gilboa where the great men died, and he remembers Saul and Jonathan in their prime as princes, soldiers, and friends. So then the book of Jashar seems to have been a collection of well-known poems and songs. No copies have survived, but it provides a clue to how the Bible books must have been written, using historical records, songs, and stories. The book of Jashar is also mentioned in Joshua 10:13, and you can see it mentioned here in chapter 1, verse 18 there. So this song that David wrote is very, very well known and is passed down not just through the Bible but also through that book, even though there are no known copies to be in existence today. So anyway, the mountains of Gilboa are well known to this day simply because they are the place where Saul and Jonathan died. And so then, starting in chapter 2, David finally becomes king of Judah. So Saul has died, and so has his son Jonathan. The way is now open for David to become king, except that there are, of course, other contenders. There is sure to be a candidate from among Saul's sons or from the tribe of Benjamin, and this could lead to further bloodshed and civil war. So David seeks God's guidance before he takes any step, and then makes the short journey to Hebron. Hebron is where Abraham and the patriarchs are buried, and the place where a king might be anointed, at least over the tribe of Judah. So David is duly anointed as king over Judah, the leading tribe of Israel. Meanwhile, Abner, who is Saul's general, or who was Saul's general, has made someone else king at Mahanaim. This king is Ishbosheth, and this one is Saul's son, and he reigns over parts of Israel for 2 years. His name may mean strong man, but the real trial of strength is going to be between the two rival army commanders, Abner for Ishbosheth and the tribe of Benjamin, and Joab, who is going to be David's, and he's also from the tribe of Judah. So Joab, David's general, he wants revenge on Abner, who has killed his brother Asahel. Now, when Abner holds talks with David to make peace, Joab moves swiftly to seize and murder him. David mourns the death of Abner, a fine leader who was already working to unite the nation. This is just the start of trouble with Joab, who becomes David's kind of hitman, whether David likes it or not. Joab is a violent enemy and an unscrupulous friend. So Ishbosheth is also murdered by two of his own supporters who have changed sides. David is appalled at their deed, and then he has them executed. And so at last David is anointed king over the united tribes of Israel, and he's 30 years old, and he will reign until he's 70. So David is getting ready for 40 years on the throne. And as we look into the book of Samuel and look on, we are going to see some of the things that happen during David's reign. So what we're seeing here at the beginning of this book is really just the setup for David's for David's real turn to be the king. So we know that God anointed him the king way back when. Well, Samuel anointed him at God's bidding, way back when Saul was alive and well and was the king. But David did not take over then, and he did not take over until what we have seen here. And he went through a very difficult time while Saul was still alive, and even after Saul's death, he still had another difficult time, and that's what we see here in this reading here in 2 Samuel chapters 1 through 4. So that is all for today. I will see you guys back here tomorrow in the Book of Psalms.